Welcome to An Oral History of the Church. I'm Jonathan McCormick.
And I'm Adam Christman.
An Oral History of the Church is a conversational history podcast. This first volume is an oral history of the campus relocation of Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary's main campus from Mill Valley, California to Ontario, California. As of June 2016, the school has a new name, Gateway Seminary of the Southern Baptist Convention.
The 17th episode for this volume is an interview with Gateway Seminary PhD candidate and Regional Librarian for the San Francisco campus of Gateway Seminary, Jonathan Johnny Mack'll-Bring-Him-Back McCormick. Did you like that one?
It works. It's simpler than other titles I've had.
I think I'll ask you about those off the air. Well, Jonathan, as we mentioned in our last episode, we're continuing our methodology, but interviewing each other. So we are gaining two more perspectives, similar to many of our guests in a lot of ways, but gaining two more perspectives in the study. But also we're going to provide some more overarching perspective on the study itself.
Yeah, we're going to reflect on the study, talk about what we learned, some common themes we noticed that were recurrent, and hopefully give some takeaways.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, let's just go ahead and get into more of the biographical questions here at the outset of the interview. So, Jonathan, how did you first hear about Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary?
I was raised in a Southern Baptist church. My dad and my grandfather were both deacons in Southern Baptist churches. So I can't remember not knowing about the two educational institutions in California that are operated by Southern Baptists, California Baptist College and University when it changed names, and Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary.
Okay. And those churches that, or at least the church where your father was a deacon, if not also the other one, where were those? What were the names of those churches?
My father has served at Trinity Baptist Church in Palmdale, California, and is at Palms Baptist Church in 29 Palms. The first church my parents were attending when I was alive was First Baptist Church of Palmdale, California. It changed names and merged with Trinity Baptist Church a number of years ago. And I don't know all of the churches my grandfather served at and was a member of, but I believe he was a member of Palm in Riverside for a significant number of years.
Okay.
Palm Avenue Baptist Church.
Gotcha.
Not the same Palms Baptist Church my dad's now at. Anyway.
Gotcha. So you heard about it as a child. How did you first come to study with Golden Gate?
Well, I went to Cal Baptist because I wanted to study for ministry. I was in the applied theology program, and I decided I wanted to be able to teach, either in a college or a graduate setting, and you need a PhD to do that. So I decided I need seminary. Seminary is a good training for ministry anyway. I don't want to separate academia from ministry. Awful things happen to both when they get disconnected.
Yeah.
So I talked to some of the professors at Cal Baptist. Obviously, there were some who recommended where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
Beeson, Southern, everything back east.
Sure.
I did have some recommendation from Golden Gate, but it was rather heavy emphasis on go east, young man.
Yeah.
I looked at Beeson and I changed my mind. I had looked at some other places in California and changed my mind as well, and I started studying at Southern.
Mm-hmm.
Studied online for a year,
Mm-hmm.
realized one, I didn't think that online education, the way I was experiencing it, was giving me the benefit I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I was not, in my opinion, making the connections with the professors that I found valuable in my undergrad, and looking forward what I got from Cal Baptist. Golden Gate. Yep, I'm gonna do that a couple times.
It's okay. It's late. That's all right. Speaking of which, I forgot to do the biographical marker at the beginning of our interview. I suppose I should do that right now, shouldn't I?
Sure.
This interview is taking place on September the 11th, 2016, with Adam Christman interviewing Jonathan McCormick. This interview is taking place online.
If we need to clean that up, that's okay. So I did 30 units at Southern, and that was their cap. They've changed their rules since then, but you could only do a third of the degree online.
Mm-hmm.
They now have a fully online MDiv, just like Gateway Seminary does.
Right.
And I tried to find employment in Kentucky and couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And I thought it was wildly irresponsible to fly across country enrolling in a graduate program without any way of supporting myself.
Yeah.
I had been doing pulpit supply in Southern California. The church that I had been preaching at was interested in hiring me as a pastor, and it made more sense to attend a seminary in California than going across the country or something else.
Yeah.
So I began studying at one of our regional campuses, not at the Mill Valley campus, and I got my MDiv at the Brea campus.
Mm.
Upon the conclusion of my MDiv, I had known I had wanted to get a PhD. I decided in the middle of one of the church history classes that our professor Rick Durst did what I wanted it to do. He taught the way I wanted to teach. He was very effective in his engagement.
Yeah.
I wanted to study with him. And so there's only one place he went for his PhD, which was
right.
Golden Gate. And there's only one place with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what was on the table.
Yeah. So how did you first come to work for Golden Gate, now Gateway? You've worked there in a variety of positions, and you're still employed by the seminary.
Yes. The first job I had for the seminary was working campus patrol, locking in and unlocking the buildings. There's no shame in it.
Sure.
About the same I time I got hired for that job, I also was offered a position with the library as a reference assistant.
Mm-hmm.
There were some movements in the employment at the library. Just before I came on, our reference librarian, Fred Youngs, retired and was replaced by a younger librarian who lasted for about a semester. Wasn't a good fit, and Kelly decided to go a different direction with our reference librarian.
Yeah.
I was there that 6 months with the other interim reference librarian, and then stuff started moving. The acquisitions librarian started doing some of the reference work and needed some help getting his job done.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some of the easier to hand off work of receiving items and checking down open orders, some other things, as an acquisitions assistant. Once everything settled and they had a new reference librarian, the acquisitions librarian became the reference librarian, the circulation librarian became the acquisitions collection development librarian. There was an opening for circulation. I put in my application and I became the assistant librarian of circulation services.
Do you think they could make that title longer?
I certainly hope not.
It's going to get hard to fit on a name tag.
I think they've shortened it back down now.
And then just recently, so as we've been cataloging in our study, the campus was announced as sold in 2014. The relocation took place over the summer of 2016. So Ontario is now up and running, and here's the Bay Area campus that is currently more like a remnant than a transplant, but when you transition to Fremont, it will be. So over the summer, leading up to the summer, actually, you secured your current position, which we announced at the beginning of this interview. You are the regional librarian for the San Francisco campus.
Correct. I do the work of a regional librarian, which is a little bit of everything. I have been adding a lot of books to our collection. My last count was 1,443. I do reference work, so students come in, I interview them to help them get them started with their research, and then I check the books out to them.
Yeah.
I supervise reference assistants.
And you now get to work for, I suppose, two bosses, the campus director and the library director.
Yes, I have a bit of a triangle. My direct report is Dr. Rick Durst. I enjoy working with him.
Yeah.
Noticing a theme here. And Dr. Bob Phillips is my technical supervisor. So he tells me how to do my job.
Right.
And then somehow in the middle of that, I'm also working with online students and trying to help assist that, which is making videos and posting them online, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, how long then have you studied and worked at Golden Gate, if there was a break in between MDiv and when you moved up to the Mill Valley campus, go ahead and indicate that too.
I have studied 7 years with Golden Gate Seminary.
Mm-hmm.
There was no break between my Brea time and my time at the Mill Valley campus. I graduated, decided that summer, and then moved up in June of 2012. I resigned my church 3 years to the Sunday from when I accepted the position as pastor at the church.
Oh. Some neat symmetry.
I didn't plan that.
Sure.
Just that was how it happened.
Well, we've essentially already covered this, but in case it's any different or if there's anything to add, what is your current role with Gateway Seminary?
Regional Librarian for the San Francisco campus. And I don't know how to describe what I'm doing with the online program.
Sure, that's fine. And a PhD candidate, right?
And a PhD candidate, and if they don't throw me out of it, the registrar for one of the CLD centers.
Ah. All right. Oh, and you're also a student at another institution simultaneously.
Yes.
Tell us about that real quick.
I'm a Spartan. I have begun. Yes. I've started my Master of Library and Information Science at San Jose State University.
Okay, so you are a literal glutton for punishment then. Like,
yes.
Case study, your picture is there in the encyclopedia.
Sleep and I had a good run.
Right.
Just working out together anymore. So I just had to let that go.
You had to kiss dating sleep goodbye.
Yes.
So you're a full-time employee with a volunteer job as registrar for CLD. You are a full-time PhD student or candidate. You are a part-time MLIS student, and you are married, and you have a 12-week-old. Is that correct?
13.
13 now. 13.
3 months.
Yeah. You know, self-loathing is supposed to have a limit, right? You got to take care of your body at some point.
I have been given a certain amount of time while I'm working to work on my MLS.
Yeah, because it benefits the seminary to get you educated in that field. And
it's considered part of my professional development.
Absolutely.
And I'm on interrupted status because reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a pretty good reason. I mean, the San Francisco campus will only last in Mill Valley for another 3.5 months. So you guys got to start looking for a new home in the East Bay and all of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, let's move on to the next question. What are some of your favorite memories of studying or working at Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary in this location?
I had a weekly appointment that I whined about and was a pain in the neck, I admit, with two of my fellow PhD students to discuss life and encourage one another and have a hard time finding where we're going to eat. Every Friday with Dr. Rex Shaver and soon to be Dr. Adam Christman. I grew a lot from this process, and I miss our lunches. So that was something that I really appreciated and remember. Um, and I think I just like food
Oh, yeah,
because
that
that's going
makes
to
me
be
into
a
it.
theme here. Um, I regularly ate with our uh, librarian emeritus, former reference librarian, Dr. Fred Youngs.
Fred is great. I love Fred. Well,
He
Dr. Fred. We normally call him Dr. Fred.
he'd talk to me about my dissertation. He'd tell me about his history. He'd tell me about stuff he was doing. He was doing some archival work for the
Hmm.
library. He said, "I can't tell you the two juicy bits I'm finding in here, but you know." Uh, so
You know,
that was
he
always fun.
one funny thing about Dr. Fred Youngs is he found a picture among all of the many pictures he probably found in the archives while he was doing that project. And he came and found you. So you know this story, but this is
Yeah,
more for the listeners. He came and found you and said, "Hey, I think this lady is Adam Christman's mom." He just looked at the picture and somehow, I guess he's a phrenologist and we just didn't know it. He must have just looked at her head and been like, "That's the same head. That's the same noggin as Adam Christman." Because I worked with him when I was at the library. Um, and he just knew. And we met up later that day and he said, "Yeah, is this her?" And I said, "Yeah, that's her. How did you figure that out?" And he said, "I don't know. I just looked at it and I thought, that's got to be Adam's mom. I know she studied here."
Dr. Fred knows all.
That's a good maxim to live by, really, if you're anywhere in his proximity.
So if Dr. Fred, you listen to this interview, thank you again for your service for the seminary.
That's right.
It wouldn't have been the same place without you.
That's right.
Um,
Do you have any other favorite memories, or do you think that's about what you would say on that question?
the birth of my son.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my wife and I didn't think we could get pregnant. We did, and my son was born at Marin General. We took him home here at this campus just after the campus closed.
Mm.
He was supposed to be due on the date everything was going to close. And so I said, Dr. Orge, I know you need me to help pack the library, but if I get the call, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And he understood. And Calvin said, "No, Dad, you can keep working. Keep
It's cool.
working. It's cool." And he wasn't born until like there was one last truck that was leaving after everybody had gone.
Yeah.
And it left the day he was born.
Yeah. Well, that's one helpful kid, you know.
Yeah. So,
All right. Well, our next question is, what is your most prized achievement that you earned while at this campus?
comps.
Yeah.
I was either the second or third theology student to take our comprehensive examinations.
Yeah.
We
Right. That major is still pretty new. When the program reopened in 2007, it only had the two biblical studies options, and they introduced the theology majors quite a few years later, either the year you started it or the year before. I forget.
the year before.
Right. So they went for 4 years without theology, and as a result, they had theology students, but no theology comps for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Until you and one or two others went through it.
And one of the questions was, I can't give the question, but it was write down everything you learned the first week of seminars in this class plus the reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. And you were supposed to do that alongside 4 other questions.
4 other questions, yeah.
In the span of 5 hours.
So I wrote 5 pages covering a big chunk of time that I can't specify because that would tell which class it was for, and thus give away the question. And I passed, and they told me to get a good job.
Yeah.
I consider that a great achievement.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I would consider an achievement is, and you received this also, but there we go. I was given the opportunity to teach down in Mexico on behalf of the seminary.
Yeah.
They've had 3 students do this for the institution, and it's normally been reserved for faculty members.
Right.
So I feel really honored that Dr. Martin would take a chance with this relationship and invest it in a young PhD student.
That's right. Yeah, I feel very similarly. Yeah.
So those are the 2 big achievements I think I've completed here at the Mill Valley campus.
Okay. Well, you said you came in 2012 to the campus, and you also mentioned that you first heard about the seminary when you were a child. So all of that leading up to 2014. Before the announced sale of the Mill Valley campus on April 1st, 2014, what was your impression of the relationship between Golden Gate's Mill Valley campus and our neighbors?
Before I moved up here, I thought it was fine. I went to one of the missions conference. Yeah. It was a good time. Once I moved up here, then I noticed there were some things that weren't always an easy relationship.
Yeah.
And mainly with the immediate neighbors. So I worked as a tutor. The tutoring company had hired multiple seminarians. They loved us.
Yeah.
Because we were older people, so we knew what we were doing. But we could be available at that weird chunk in the day because seminarians have weird schedules.
Yep.
And from what I heard from every other employer, Starbucks loved hiring seminarians. I don't think Starbucks could operate, would have operated without the seminarians. We'll see what happens.
For a long time, I think it's true. It has been true that there wasn't a Starbucks in Marin that you could go to that didn't have a seminarian working there at some point during the week.
But it was the sort of the immediate neighbors that seemed to have this, at best, dismissiveness of us existing, or a degree of antagonism about our plans of either upgrading or maintenance.
Yeah.
And it did seem a bit to rub off, not just on having a problem with the institution, but having a problem with some of the students around.
Yeah. Well, how did your impression change, if at all, after the current president, Dr. Jeff Orge, announced the sale?
Well, I had just read the master plan because self-loathing. We've already talked about that. There's another reason, but I don't want to tell that one. And when I finished reading it, it was clear to me this may have been the best deal we could have gotten, but it was an awful agreement for the institution.
Mm.
So when Ann Dent told us close the library, Dr. Martin said so. I thought something's wrong. We've sold the campus.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Martin doesn't talk to the circulation supervisor unless he needs to.
You're right.
If
he needs to talk to the circulation supervisor, he's probably talking to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was my goal never to him have to think about my job.
Yeah.
And we didn't even close for chapel. We just put a sign up and left.
Yeah.
And he said, throw them out of the building.
Right.
So,
like, bodily grab them and
yes.
then no.
Yeah. Yeah, for those of you who can't see me, I'm all 280 pounds of flab and fat. I can't throw anybody out the front door.
Right, so you had to close it down.
So I had to close it down, and after that, I had seen some writings in the paper complaining about the political process, saying, "No, we don't want new housing. We don't want you to fix the housing. We don't want changes at the seminary campus."
Yeah.
And then about once a week for that next 3 months, there was something in the paper saying just how awful Branson was, how awful the family that the money was from, how awful it was that the seminary was selling the property.
Right. That's both in op-eds and in articles.
Yeah.
The articles, you could see the particular slant, the particular viewpoint of each writer.
Yeah, there
maybe not every writer, but
there did not seem to be
amount.
A noticeable amount. There did not seem to be a wall of separation between the reporting and the commentary.
Yeah.
Which, okay, it's your paper.
Sure. Or rag, whatever, you know.
It could do good journalism.
Sure, if they wanted
to. I
don't
think it did, related to this or any of the other housing development issues in Marin during the last 4 years.
Right, because that's not going to get you any points with the wealthy folks, the wealthy NIMBYs in Marin who are fighting all of those housing developments.
Yep.
And those are the people you want donating or buying ad space in your paper.
Yep. And a seminary that's moving away is not buying ad space.
Nope.
So I did think that at least initially, the announcement did make some things unsettled. And I pet sat my opportunities to do that just fell through the floor after the announcement of the move, because they didn't know if I would be here, and they didn't want to, their pet to be. They wanted their pet to be used to whoever they were being babysat by.
Right. Okay. So, were you in on the discussions surrounding the potential sale before it was finalized?
No. I just guessed really well.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing all that extraneous reading amidst all the weird modern flagellation you're experiencing, it's not a hard sum to come up to. All right, so the next question is, what was your opinion about the sale at that time?
On the one hand, I thought it was awful for me. I had left my ministry position. I had left my family. I had moved across the state to study here with one person. And I wanted to study on campus, not at a distance.
Yeah.
And the job I was in was a paraprofessional position. It didn't require the Master of Library Science.
Yeah.
I'd either have to pack up my family, move down to Southern California again to keep my job, or get a Master of Library Science.
Mm-hmm.
Now, taking me out of the equation, looking at the 83 master plan, looking at the financial situation, looking at the socio-political situation, it's the only thing that could be done.
Yeah.
I'm a historic theologian, so I'm hesitant to go outside of my discipline, but sometimes I do. I have to be aware of sociology.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sociological construction of gentrification. It's a description of how areas in a community change over time, generally moving from being populated by people at a lower socioeconomic status by a group that's wealthy.
Yeah. Is there a typical particular situation between the one group and the other? Is it more commonly like you've already given identifiers, but are there other secondary identifiers for these groups that are generally seen more often than others?
Extreme cultural or racial differences between the original community and the community moving in.
Okay.
So there was a church in Oakland, historically Black Baptist church, almost got gentrified because neighbors complained because they sang loudly. Black Baptists sing loud. What's your problem? The church has been there 20 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't the church that changed. It was the environment.
Yeah.
And they use social and political and economic tools to make the community look more like them.
Yeah.
And the people who are at a lower socioeconomic status and are at a minority group within the larger community don't have the political, economic, and social tools to be able to fight back to keep their home.
Yeah.
Racially, we don't look very different.
Sure.
And I'm not saying most of the No Branson people wanted to get rid of us. There are probably 2 or 3 who want the seminary gone because it's a Christian institution, but that's not the group. Nobody came to any of these meetings saying, we want to get out the pores.
Right.
We sold off land and they bought it. And we don't fit the culture in the area anymore. And we just couldn't stay.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think about. As you mentioned, the No Branson, as we call them, the No Branson people, the Seminary Neighborhood Association, is an interesting grab bag because there are plenty of people in that group who were content with the seminary as it was.
Yeah.
But don't want this larger school, probably a high school, to come in.
Yeah.
The problem with that, of course, was the seminary couldn't stay as it was. It had to update those buildings. And if it were to survive as an institution, it had to somehow grow. So being blocked in both of those efforts meant that it had to leave.
And even if they stopped politically stopping us from updating and renovating the campus, what I saw in the 83 plan, the extra costs of what we would be responsible for the infrastructure in Mill Valley or in Strawberry would be outrageous. There'd be no way we could go to Southern Baptist donors and say, hey, can you help us put in another signal? We did that before.
Right.
We paid for the signal off the freeway. I think the community used it a lot more and needed it a lot more than the seminary did.
Right.
So I don't think it was a wise use of Southern Baptist resources to pour money into public works of Strawberry.
Right. And even as a political gesture, the hope was that it would help it work out, that it would help the seminary get along in the way that it wanted to.
But it did not do that.
That's not how it ended up. That's right. So as both the economic infrastructure interest side, it didn't really do anything for the seminary.
Nope.
And politically, it definitely didn't do anything for the seminary, ultimately. Nope. Yeah. I don't know one person who said, I don't want the seminary to go. They paid for that traffic stop.
Yep. And I'm not saying anyone is mean or evil or cruel.
Yeah,
or
sure.
hates me because I'm Baptist.
Right.
It's just the market forces drove us out.
Yeah. Yeah. The as you said, the area has changed. Marin County is very well known for containing a lot of wealthy households. One of the wealthiest neighborhoods, several of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the United States are located in Marin County.
Yeah.
As we've mentioned throughout the podcast so far, there are homes sitting literally adjacent to the seminary property that sell for $5 million.
Yep.
The area changed. It was all fields and agriculture, and now it's CFOs and HMOs and Google employees and whatnot.
So to get back to the answer to the question, I didn't like it, but I thought it was the right decision.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see any way the seminary could exist in 10 years, 20 years, maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
And keep on the path it was going down.
Well, it's now mid-September in 2016. The move officially took place this summer, mostly over the course of June and July. Has your opinion about the sale changed at all, really, since it was announced?
There have been, not really. My opinions just have been more concretized.
Right. As you get more information.
Yeah. There's been a few more instances of people not knowing what to do with seminarians. There have been a couple times I'd been followed home from work. I'm presuming somebody thought it's weird that someone's walking around down the street at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And that happened to, I can name names. I know other people it happened to do too.
Sure. Because lots of folks probably aren't paying too close attention and they don't know that there are still people there.
Yeah. Oh, this was even before the move.
Right. Yeah. Some people thought it was an immediate.
Yeah. Some people thought it was immediate.
Yeah.
And yeah. The new property is very different. It's pretty. It's effective. It's office space. It's not here, but the seminary can live.
Right.
It's just going to be a very different seminary. And I don't know if I would have decided to attend Gateway if I had had the option. I don't know. I made the same decision.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you don't have to.
Yeah.
Got that under your belt already. One
I
MDiv
do.
down, most of the PhD down. So I'm gonna ask you the last question. You put it to me in a semi-awkward way in our last episode. So I'm going to ask you, in the hypothetical future, when Dr. Orge has a cybernetic eye and a bionic arm, he sits down across from you and his arm stops whirring and clicking with all of its mechanical bits and pieces. And with his new cyber voice, he asks you what the seminary should prioritize in this new... Sorry, I can't do it.
You've gone too far, man.
What? I know, I went too deep. Sorry. I'll start over. What do you hope the seminary will prioritize as they make this historic transition?
Well, as a librarian, obviously I want us to see the library as a value-added component of the institution and not just a giant black hole where money falls in.
Sure.
Because PhD students have expensive tastes or needs.
Yeah.
German stuff is expensive to import.
Rare stuff.
Rare stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't always get it through interlibrary loan. Sometimes you got to buy stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, we've got a PhD program. So I would hope that we would continue to fund and resource the library. Part of that being maintaining top levels, state-of-the-art levels of technological development across the system.
Mm-hmm.
Reference materials and journals are always going to be electronic from this point on.
Yeah.
We've got to have the stuff for our professors and students to access our stuff. The other side, this was something that Kelly had an interest in, Bob has an interest in, I hope our next library director has an interest in, not that I want Bob to retire anytime soon,
Sure.
but having a high quality archive and collection of Baptist resources of the West.
Yeah. That would be a very interesting idiosyncrasy for the Gateway Seminary Library. Midwestern has that, what I have come to understand is a lovely Spurgeon collection, for example.
Yep.
So it would be nice to have what you're talking about in our library system as well.
New Orleans has a wonderful library and wonderful stuff on hymnology and history of Christian music, and a lot of good stuff for doing text critical work. And that supports their PhD programs.
Right.
Awesome. Eric, if you're listening, thanks for all your help. We've got good relationship with the other seminaries.
Yeah.
We don't need to be Southern or Southwestern or Southeastern.
You need to be Gateway.
We need to be Gateway.
Right.
And we've had good historians here. We have good historians here.
Yeah.
Dr. Christman is remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Rick Durst is amazing. We have great historians. Dr. Kuykendall is a great historian of the Bible.
Right.
We can do church history well.
Yeah.
Especially Baptist history, because that's who we are.
Yeah.
We can't do Presbyterian history as well as a Presbyterian school. Let's be us.
Right.
So that would be one priority. And the other priority I would want us to emphasize is to continue our emphasis on intercultural flavor that we have here in the West.
Yeah.
We had a really large Korean population at the Milk Valley campus and had a large Hawaiian population.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that we would continue to attract Korean students in Southern California. I would hope that we'd continue to attract students from different parts of the United States who are able to engage with their indigenous population.
Yeah.
There's 2 Demon students right now working on ministry to Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Dr. Dent is remarkable at understanding cultures. Our listeners have heard Dr. Lisa Hoff and her interview.
Right.
We've got faculty who get culture.
Yeah.
I would love to see a continued emphasis on reaching other cultures and helping do ministry in a way that's appropriate and understands those cultures.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan, for letting me pick your brain for your own input here into the study.
Thank you.
We should transition to a little bit of reflection on the study as a whole.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the most common themes observed through this 17-part study?
One of the common themes that I see was that we weren't as effective at communicating to alumni as we could have been.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to name names.
Besides, we've discussed that
Besides
quite a bit
that,
in a couple episodes and some others. I would add to that we've seen that it's the relocation is not so much that the burning torches and pitchforks have been turned against the Christians in Marin County. It's that the local area is a culture that cannot sustain a Christian seminary in its locale.
Yeah.
They had to spit us out. They had to get rid of us because we were not like them.
Marin changed.
Yeah.
Whether it was whatever the cause, however it happened, Marin changed.
Right.
Maybe we changed too.
Sure.
I'll give him that. But our culture and Marin's culture was no longer compatible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did see on a more positive direction. I think Dr. Orge, among staff and students and faculty, projected a vision, and more or less we caught it.
Right.
We got the job done.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
And I think it spread around to everyone that we interviewed for our study, including folks who aren't current students, who are not current staff, who are not current faculty.
Yeah.
People who live close to the seminary, who have maybe some ties to the seminary still, even though they are alumni or what have you, that even they, outside of the day-to-day circles of a student or a staff or faculty member, even they caught the vision that Dr. Orch cast and understood it and, liked it or not, played their role in encouraging the students who were members of their congregations or what have you.
Yeah, he projected a clear, concise, consistent vision with workable, plausible action steps.
Yeah.
All the way through, from announce the sale to get off the property.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I think we noticed, maybe a minor note, but a consistent professionalism on the staff of the seminary, led by Dr. Orge and the vice presidents, of course, but a professional air. Yep. There wasn't the weeping and gnashing of teeth. There weren't alumni burning Dr. Orge in effigy on the front lawn of the seminary or anything like that.
We shall overcome someday.
Well, except for you that one time. That was really weird. But yeah, I think that the staff and the faculty performed admirably in how they conducted themselves and got the job done. Sure, there were mistakes, and I think the biggest oversight was that alumni problem that we've mentioned here and talked about in depth elsewhere. But overall, they did very well, I think.
Yeah. Everyone knew their job, and we did it.
Yeah. What were two of your favorite interviews that we conducted, as far as things that showed you something new, or something that an interview that confirmed something that you were curious whether it could be confirmed? So I'm limiting you to two, but I'm leaving the reasons why very open and broad. Whether it was somebody you really wanted to hear from, or somebody who surprised you with their stories. What were two of your favorite conversations that we had in the course of this study?
I love Daniel Choi.
Yeah.
I wish I could have been there.
Yeah.
I think he really embodies that second aspect of what I was talking about Golden Gate being a place that is open and welcoming and effective in training people for ministry in diverse environments.
Right. An Australian Presbyterian came to the San Francisco Bay Area for a year so that he could go down to the LA area for another 2 years.
Yeah, he gets it. He gets the whole vision.
Yeah.
And he's just a pleasure to listen to. His stories were great.
Right.
The other one for me was listening to Dr. Urbino.
Yeah.
Because of his different perspectives throughout the way through. And again, for the other side of my care about the emphasis, he exemplifies the academic rigor that is Gateway Seminary, or should be Gateway Seminary.
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny him swapping out the exhibits.
That was pretty cool. I like that story.
I don't think he would be very happy if I had done that, but whatever. Sure. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Well, if I can answer my own question, but I'm going to add a caveat to mine that they can't be the same two. I will lead off with our interview with Dr. Orge, because he gave us the inside perspective on everything that went down, and we got to see up close his thoughts that led to the leadership decisions he made, which resulted in everything that we've been talking about.
Certainly.
So for those reasons, I mean, maybe that's the pat answer, the guy in charge of the entire thing was one of the most interesting interviews about that thing. Maybe that's a given. I'm guilty, but I'm going to say Dr. Orge for one of them.
But if somebody ever uses our oral history project to write a history of the seminary, that's the one that's going into the book.
Right, of course. Certainly. So he was really good. And then I also enjoyed Kelly Campbell's quite a bit, actually. And I regret that I couldn't come to that one. She was an interesting one for me because of her perspective on the seminary as a woman, as a full-time staff member who was like just shy of faculty member for so long and then became faculty, and also someone who moved on prior to the sale in order to kind of observe it from a little bit more distance. That was all very interesting to get from her. Although I'm going to cheat, and I'm also going to toss in Dr. Prescott was pretty interesting. I liked his as well. Not that I disliked any of the others, of course. Just trying to pick out highlights and themes as we reflect on the overall study.
Like picking out your favorite kid.
Yeah.
I can still do that.
Knows who he or she is.
Well, this is the final episode of the Campus Relocation Project of the first volume of An Oral History of the Church. Volume 2.
Right. Well, that volume is not coming out next week, dear listener. Hi, Mom. We are taking a hiatus between Volume 1 and Volume 2 so we can develop it quite a bit and be well prepared for when we do record and get these episodes ready to send out to you. So for Volume 2, you'll want to, of course, be subscribed so you don't miss it, but it will come out in the month of November 2016.
And our topic?
Half-hearted desk drum roll. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Our topic will be historiography.
Good. And if you're still awake, if that word by itself didn't put you to sleep, Jonathan, can you define for us what we mean by that?
Historiography is how you write history. So there's sort of two components. There's what we've just done, people who are in the moment of the history, who are chronicling stuff down so it doesn't get forgotten.
Yeah.
The other side is what we've been looking forward at every once in a while, saying somebody may read this someday, listen to this someday.
Yeah. And use it for a
history of the institution, reflection on historical events, and criticism of the record.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan didn't know what in the world he was talking about gentrification. He was talking out of his behind.
But that Adam sounds like he's really good looking.
Yeah. Historiography also evaluates the sources.
Right. So we'll discuss method, and we will discuss kind of schools of thought and perhaps differences between approaches based on your perspective, or perhaps in different areas of history, between biblical history or something else. And we haven't nailed down a particular number of episodes quite yet. So again, please do subscribe so you don't miss any of those. And then our third volume, I think it's okay to go ahead and announce that too. Jonathan, don't you think?
Oh, I agree.
So our second volume will run anywhere from 2 to 4 months, depending on how deep we want to go down that rabbit hole, I suppose. But the year 2017, if you weren't already aware of it, is the 500th anniversary of the official beginning of the Protestant Reformation. It was in October of 1517 that Martin Luther hammered his 95 Theses on the Wittenberg door. So alongside probably a lot of major historical media outlets, if we can consider ourselves that, and institutions and individuals, we will be adding our voice on the Protestant Reformation. That will be Volume 3 coming in 2017, and that will probably cover most of the year, with, again, a brief hiatus between Volume 2 and Volume 3.
If this sounds interesting to you, please subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode. Rate and review so that other people can hear about this this project and can learn a little bit more about how history gets written.
That's right. And so when the next time you pick up a history book, you'll be able to think about the work that went into producing the book that you have, and perhaps being able to better handle what it is that's in your hands, what it is that that author or those authors did as they present to you their comments on events and persons of the past. Jonathan, do you have anything else for our listeners?
Thanks for sticking with us through all these 17 episodes.
Definitely.
I hope you come and listen to our next volume.
We're real grateful for you. So, for one last time, in Volume 1 of An Oral History of the Church, may God bless you as you go. He's already gone before.